first?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Chair, and welcome to all our guests today. It's a very interesting discussion, and we've obviously have a number of your positions that are neutral, which is, I think it's a good thing. In terms of the INMO, its position, and the Irish College of GPs, has that position say previously, has that position kind of changed in relation to that stance and assisted dying? Has it always been a neutral kind of stance, or has it changed over time? Or
I can answer?
Yeah.
So I suppose our position at the moment is that we are representing, as we've said already, the broad views of all our membership. As we've said, some very supportive, some very firmly on the other end of the argument, and many people in the middle. I think this has very much been an opening of the conversation. And we're at almost, I wouldn't say we're at an early stage, but we are still in the early stages of that exploration and that conversation. So to directly answer you, there hasn't been a change in our position, but we are moving along as time and society and life and legislation dictates.
And Everett?
In terms of the INMO position, there wouldn't have been a change in position over time. There are very strongly held views across a range of the spectrum on this issue. And I think there are some views that are very binary at one end of the spectrum or the other. And then there are discussion points within the middle. And you'll have seen as part of our submission that we try to represent all of our members, and then to assist the committee that if there's a change in the law, what needs to be done both to be balanced, to protect those members, but also to protect service provision as well, if that's the decision. But one of the things that you'll have noted, Deputy, in our submission is that we say talk about the importance of exploring with health professionals the views that they may have and the objections that they may have, so that they can reach a position of deciding whether they have a conscientious objection. And I think that is something that is essential, because in other processes, people would have engaged in that process and decided that they did not in the context that it arose, or some will decide that they have. But the point is to allow them to do so, because this is new, in the sense of new in terms of practice, if it were to go ahead, and to facilitate that, so that services, as a colleague mentioned in an online contribution, can be organised in a way, if that is the decision that is made, that both protects the professional and allows the service to be provided.
Thanks, thank you very much. Just in relation to, obviously, if, and hopefully, if voluntary assisted dying was legislated for, the first port of call for those that would raise that issue would be GPs. I think generally we've seen the kind of I suppose situations in different countries where they have legislated for voluntary assisted dying, where they have raised it with their GPs. So GPs are on the front line as such, in more ways than one. Because obviously GPs would probably know their patient more than anybody, in relation to a medical setting. And I think they probably have more knowledge of the person more than anything else. But in relation to the state, in relation to the majority of GPs are conflicted. And I understand that, I do understand. There's obviously a very nuanced, I suppose, view of assisted dying. Could you elaborate on how GPs are conflicted in relation to that kind of, I suppose, relationship with a GP and their patient?
You're absolutely right. GPs are involved with their patients really right through from patient's birth, all along their lifetime, right through to a patient's death. And our engagement members has made it very clear that some members are in support of assisted dying and others are equally strongly opposed to it. Many of our members are in the middle, and they are conflicted that they see the professional obligations as a doctor to support patients, and then they have their own personal moral beliefs which are very strongly held and which fed into the conscientious objection piece that we have discussed. So there is a tension between a doctor's, a GP's personal views and their professional obligations and their professional role. And that tension is there, and our role is to support all our members with education so that we can help our members explore and come to a better understanding of the ethical, the legal, the moral implications for them personally and for the profession and for patients in assisted dying.
Yeah. And obviously the confliction is that at the moment voluntary assisted dying is not legal.
Yes.
You know, and I'm sure in your professional career, patients have brought this issue up, and it's a difficult conversation to have in relation to, you know, somebody that has, you know, in a situation where they do not want to go through a period of their life, they want to forego that. And I understand that. I think the majority of people would understand that. So obviously we're here to kind of tease all that out and hopefully kind of make a recommendation of legislative change. In relation to safeguards, and I understand you have a neutral position on this, and I think safeguards are the kind of at the heart of this debate. What kind of safeguards would make GPs be at comfort in relation to any sort of legislative change that could happen?
I think safeguarding medical professionals and safeguarding patients are equally important. Some of the safeguards might be relatively straightforward, like we can look at an age prohibition. Other ones may be designed to avoid medical tourism, so we might say you need to be a resident of the state. I think they're clearly fairly binary for most people. Other safeguards then come into, you know, the eligibility criteria and what patients become eligible for it. What is the medical diagnosis? Do we need a medical diagnosis? Who verifies that? And then we move into the whole conscientious objection piece, and how do we safeguard clinicians and patients when conscientious objection is a major point for those involved. So the safeguards really are very important for professionals, but also for our patients.
Yeah, and obviously we've seen in previous legislation around determination of pregnancy that this can actually be done. Legislation can be put in place around conscientious objections and so forth, where GPs or medical professionals do not want to partake. And that can be done. So we have a precedent in this country and so forth. So look, I'll come back at the next part and I'll give a few more questions. Yeah. Thanks.
Just very, very briefly, Dr. Harvey wants to come in.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the time is up, but just briefly, Dr. Harvey, because I want to let you in.
Yes, I just wanted to comment that I did not indicate that my position was neutral. In fact, I feel that including medical aid in dying within the scope of palliative care is not good for end-of-life care. It's not good for clinicians. It's not good for patients. And the reason I raise that is not on moral grounds, but on clinical grounds. Many aspects of palliative care are about the quality of the relationship between the patient and the healthcare providers. And we've in fact done studies that have looked at, what are the things that are most determinant of whether or not patient's sense of dignity is upheld towards the end of life. And over and above anything else, it's this idea of being respected, this idea of being understood. And at the end of the day, there's a paper that I had published in the Journal of Clinical Oncology titled Dignity in the Eye of the Beholder, the disposition of the healthcare provider, the ability to affirm the worth and the ongoing connection with that healthcare provider was the thing that was most determinant of patient dignity. And we know from other studies that when patients feel that they no longer have that kind of ongoing solid connectedness, that it heightens their suicidality. And in fact, not offering follow-up, not offering care is one of the predictors of suicidality in patients who are experiencing advanced illness.
Thank you very much, Dr.